Hello everyone, I'm Sylvain Calinon from the IDIAP Research Institute, and today I will talk about intuitive robot programming from few demonstrations. Our group at IDIAP focuses on learning from demonstration, which encompasses various challenges such as using multiple modalities to collect these demonstrations, and also several forms of generalization problems, because we would like the recorded movements to be transferred to new situations and to new robots. Learning from demonstrations is very helpful in manufacturing environments, especially with the new applications of these robots in the SMEs, where these robots need to be reprogrammed more frequently, and they also need to share the same workspace as that of the users. The field of machine learning has a different problem than in robotics, in the sense that the dataset is usually already here, and we can use a large amount of data to train the models. In robotics, we have different problems because we have varied robots, varied sensors, and the data are not here already, but need to be acquired. So the formulation needs to take that into account, and we need to exploit structures in order to reduce this amount of data to train the system. And I will be discussing different of these structures in today's presentation. The first one is about learning structures. Indeed, we can exploit interaction in order to get better data. So in some way, the learning problem is more of a scaffolding problem, where we can provide support to the robot. At the beginning, we need a lot of support, and progressively, we can remove this support. We can also exploit various learning strategies, which is a plus. Like we can have the user being here to provide initial demonstrations, but also to guide the robot, to provide feedback, and to put the robot in situations so that it can progress in the acquisition of the task. The role of the user is varied, and we should exploit these different learning modalities. Then we should also exploit interfaces in order to speed up the learning process. We would like interfaces that are intuitive to use. We would like interfaces to monitor the robot progresses, as well as to teach new skills to the robot. And an interface that we believe is relevant is to consider augmented reality applications, and in particular, augmented reality working on smartphones, because a smartphone can be viewed as an intermediary device between the traditional teaching pendant and elaborated devices such as virtual reality headsets. So we are investigating the use of these interfaces as a way to program robots and to monitor the robot progresses. Now, a structure that is important as well is the one related to the representation of skills and movements. And here we can take into account that we have movement primitives representation. And here I would like to emphasize that we should exploit as much as possible variations information about the task and uncertainty information. And I guess that we can do this in the same way as when we use a Kalman filter. When we have a model about the movement and a model about the sensors, and we fuse these different sources of information to find an estimate. And my takeaway message would be that we can exploit the same mathematical formalism, but this time to combine controllers. To have in some way several experts that are all trying to fulfill the task, but each expert will have his specialty, and will tell the other one about its specialization in the form of a distribution. So it can be a Gaussian in the most simple case, but it can be any other distributions when we talk about product of experts. And indeed, with this framework, it means that we can view the problem of combining movements not only as time-dependent behavior, but also as time-independent behavior. So I prefer actually the term behavior primitives in order to reflect this. So now I will present 4 works that are exploiting this mechanism of product of expert. The first one has some link with DMP. It has been investigated within the Collaborate project. And when we talk about DMP, what we have is a feedback control law, usually a spring number system, and we superpose a feed-forward control term that is learned from demonstrations. So what we did in this work is to extend this principle by considering more elaborated forms of superposition, by considering it as a fusion problem, which corresponds to weight matrices instead of scalars. And that is also helping us to define other forms of feedback control law. And in this case here, we used conservative policy that are in the form of linear quadratic tracking, as we can find in optimal control theory. So we have a more elaborated form of superposition of experts. Some experts can come from the user, and some others can be predetermined control policy. And we showed that we could apply this with various state space, including joint space, pixel space, and force spaces. Now we can extend this principle to anticipative behavior. So this time the robot needs also to anticipate to know what comes next. And in this case, the probabilistic representation can take a more elaborated form. In this work, we use hidden semi-Markov model as a way to represent the variations that are allowed by a robot moving through different steps in the task. In this case, we have 3 different parts of these movements with some transition probability. And the goal here is to exploit these probabilistic models together with optimal control. So the probabilistic model are setting the objective function of the optimal control problem. And what the optimal control problem is bringing is to find a controller. So instead of finding a trajectory, we find a controller that will reproduce the behavior, that will do it smoothly. And with this formulation, it's not only a controller that we learn, it's actually a set of controllers. So we view controllers as a distribution of controllers that is helping us to exploit the task variations on the uncertainty models. Here we can talk about a minimal intervention principle in the sense that the robot will react to perturbations only if they have an impact on the task. So that would be the most basic form of optimal control with linear quadratic tracking, but we can extend this principle to model predictive control onto differential dynamic programming, which is what we are currently investigating within the MEMO project. Now, the advantage of this formulation is that we can extend the objective functions to multiple coordinate systems. So it means that we can consider multiple objects. We can also consider the robot coordinate system together with an object coordinate system. And we can fuse these different sources of information in an efficient way by finding a controller that will take into account these different objects. This is also what we used within the Dexroth project, with a more simple form of fusion, where the teleoperator was controlling an underwater robot, and the goal was to turn valves. And in this kind of problem, we have high delays between the teleoperation center and the robot, and we would like the robot to locally cope with perturbations. And by encoding the behavior in different coordinate systems, we could do this efficiently by having the robot locally adjusting to perturbations without having the teleoperator knowing about this. Another typical use of this shared control paradigm is to have automatic corrections of some element composing the task. So here in this example, you can see that there is a tool that we need to orient perpendicularly to a plane. And in this case, the user doesn't need to care about that because there will be an automatic compensation of this orientation that has been learned previously. Now, if we have the chance to have a teleoperation scenario without delays, there is another tool that we can exploit, the one of diffeomorphic mappings. In this experiment, we considered bilateral teleoperation, where the user can also feel what is happening on the other side. So on the remote side, we have a robot, we have a set of objects, and on the teleoperator side, this set of objects can have different locations. So we need to cope with these different mappings between the two, and we do that in this work with diffeomorphism. If we have a single robot, so if we are not anymore in the context of teleoperation, we can still consider shared control. In this case, there is a direct link to kinesthetic teaching. In kinesthetic teaching, it's already a form of shared control, where the robot will compensate for the effect of gravity, and the user can move the robot freely without having to care about supporting the weight of the robot. Now, what we show in this work is that we can go one step further by having additional forms of virtual guides. So not only compensating for gravity, but also asking the robot to always look toward an object, or to stay within a plane, or to keep a desired orientation for the end effector. And all of this can be viewed as some constraints that are in a list of constraints that can be trained and that can act as virtual fixtures when operating the robot through kinesthetic teaching. Now, another form of structures that I would like to discuss today is the one related to geometrical structures. We have the chance in robotics to have data on manifolds that are very well structured and that are well known. And a tool that is very helpful to treat these different structures in a uniform manner is the one of Riemannian geometry. In Riemannian geometry, we can exploit these manifolds, such as orientation data, such as ellipsoids with symmetric positive definite manifolds, but also hyperbolic embeddings with graphs on trees, and subspaces in general, which can be planes or lines, or also contact constraints or null space priority. So what is interesting with this kind of tool is that there is a single methodology that can apply to these diverse tasks in robotics. And the example that I would like to show is one regarding manipulability ellipsoids, which are symmetric positive definite matrices. In this work, we showed that we can use this as a descriptor in order to transfer skills from human movement data to robots with potentially very different kinematic chains. In this case, a centaur robot. And for this kind of task, we cannot transfer directly the pose. If we transfer only the end effector locations, we have a limited behavior being reproduced. The manipulability ellipsoid is a good compromise between the two because it's reflecting how the pose should be adjusted in order to better fulfill manipulability constraints, which can be related to forces or positions. Now we can go even lower in the structure that we can consider by considering the way the data are organized. So very often, when we use linear algebra techniques, we need to store data in vector forms. But very often in robotics, the data are not in vector form from the beginning, either because we have arrays of sensors, either because we have data over a time window, or we have data in multiple coordinate systems, also because of the algorithms that require some form of basis functions. So it means that our data have some structures that are higher order arrays. The field of tensor methods is helping us in this case to find decomposition techniques that are exploiting this structure without having to vectorize these data. So there are several of these factorization techniques that we can employ. And now I will show an example by focusing on basis functions expansion. I will take the example of ergodic control, which is a control technique requiring to have Fourier basis functions along the different dimensions that we want to consider. So it means that if we consider a 6D pose of the end effector, it means that we have expansion along these 6 dimensions. So using it as it is would be too long for a robot to cope with these expansion. But if we use a low-rank tensor factorization technique, we can do it, and this is what we showed in this work, meaning that we give as input a distribution, here by collecting a set of demonstrations. This is providing a distribution that the robot should move into in order to fulfill the task. And in this case, we use that for an insertion task. So it means that we don't only give a point that the robot should reach, we give a distribution, and even if there are uncertainty in the sensor estimate about the location of the hole, we can still have the robot fulfilling the task by moving around the hole in order to reach it in a correct way. So as a takeaway message, I wanted to emphasize that we need to combine different learning modalities and that the user can be here for different reasons in the skill acquisition process. That we should move from movement primitives to behavior primitives in order to increase the capability of our robots. That we should also consider multiple coordinate systems. And finally, that robotics has different data structures and geometries that we can better exploit in order to reduce the amount of data needed for a robot to be trained. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention.